There we go. Oh, well, that was pretty easy. I thought it'd be this whole process to do a live stream, but it's just a click of a few buttons. Thank you, YouTube. So nobody's watching yet, but if you do, please let me know if you can't hear me, and if I'm just going. that really wouldn't do. Can you hear me, people? Please let me know if you can hear me and if this is going to work. So yeah, I'm here at the Gettysburg Battlefield. Just thought I'd stop in. If you're one of my buddies living in the area, I am really sorry I didn't hit you up. It's not because welcome, the Equals Gamer. Appreciate you watching, man. It's not because I didn't want to see you. It's just because I'm really like I don't have a lot of time, and I just thought I'd come and hang out and come to one of my favorite places and just get lunch. Stop by perhaps General Pickett's buffet. I'm sure when General Pickett was looking over these fields, his first thought was, one day there shall be a buffet named in my honor, and they shall call it General Pickett's buffet, and they will have creamed corn, the most diuretic creamed corn this side of Mason-Dixon. I'm sure he probably said that. But yeah, it's I haven't been here in years, and it's always lovely to be back. I don't get back enough. I really don't. This battlefield is just such an amazing place. It just really kind of, I mean, man, people talk about like the Stonehenge effect, you know, or the Jerusalem effect, right? Where just the power of a place can really sort of be felt. And I feel that way about Gettysburg. You just can't even just drive through here without having that just immense weight on you of just what happened here and everything. But yes, for those of you who don't know, I guess I should add a little bit of context. If you haven't watched many of my Civil War videos, I used to work here, and as a living historian, it's basically a heavily armed tour guide, and I would do tours in the first person as a Civil War soldier, and I would always don the most inaccurate uniform I could. No, I didn't. I just, I was like 20 and I was more focused on just looking cool. You know what I mean? And not really terribly worried about accuracy. I was like, ooh, I like this one. This is a cool jacket. This is a cool coat. So, but yeah, I mean, I think what was sort of important is what we really tried to do justice to was the stories, right? The stories of the people involved. But man, it was such a great summer. I have such fond memories of this place. Just going around with my buddies, and one of my friends who was living historian, he made these amazing cocktails. He called them Damn Fines. Super simple, just 7-Up and Di Serrano. And let me tell you, Damn Fines, they live up to the name. They are damn fine. We would sit around at his house drinking Damn Fines and talking Civil War stuff. And yeah, everybody I worked with, in the National Park Service and the Gettysburg Foundation, I mean, they were just so cool. I mean, not just like great colleagues, but just really cool people and, very knowledgeable about the Civil War. And man, I learned a lot from them. And it's interesting, because it wasn't sort of I wouldn't say it was my dream job, because that's not really what I necessarily want to do with my life. Damn, says a regular frontiersman. Hey, man, what's going on? Good to see you, or, hear from you. But yeah, they were just so cool, and they just taught me so much. And I was like 20 when I did this job, right? And even though it wasn't like my dream job, even though it is a lot of people's dream jobs, and I was incredibly lucky to be able to work here at such a young age, I kind of wish I could do it again. You know what I mean? It's just, I was so young, and I would do it so much differently now. And honestly, Gettysburg really hasn't changed that much. When was the last time I was here? Maybe, 2015, maybe, just like passing through. But my last visit, like I was here for a week in 2014, which was, not that long after, I worked here in 2013 just to see my friends and everything. But I was kind of I was thinking about that scene from The Boys. If you watch that show, the Amazon show, where Starlight, the naive young superhero, comes to Bible camp or whatever, which she loved when she was a kid, and then she starts to see all the weird kind of like anti-gay stuff at the Christian Bible camp, And she's like, this place isn't what I remembered. And I was sort of expecting to come and just, see all the Confederate flags and whatever. And especially after all my YouTube adventures, battling neo-Confederates, fighting good fights on the front lines of YouTube. Not really. I mean, just arguing with people on the internet's not that noble. But yeah, just to see all the neo-Confederate stuff and really sort of go, oh my God, be shocked by it like a, faint like a Victorian lady. But it really hasn't changed that much. Even after the 2016 election, where you'd think a lot of that stuff, just because we live in such political times, would just kind of seep into everything, just like it always does. But no, man, I mean, Gettysburg is like it's straight out of time, And the National Park Service, they've done like an amazing job. And this isn't new, but they've done an amazing job just restoring this battlefield, making it look as close as possible to what it would have looked like in 1863. Of course, the Gettysburg Road is now like a paved road, and you can see like motorcycles and scooters and stuff going down it. But I mean, the fences are as true to the period as I understand them to be. The fences where those poor rebel boys would have just jumped over and getting shot all the way. Actually, let me show you the Confederate lines. We're at the Union lines, by the way. This is Cemetery Ridge, but here, I'll turn the camera. I don't know if you'll be able to see it all. Probably not, since the sun's over there. Yeah, no, you can't see a damn thing, but that's okay. But yeah, I mean, that's a distance of a mile, man. It's crazy. There we go. Come on, autofocus. There we go. It's a distance of a mile. It's insane. It's crazy. And during the 150th anniversary, me and my buddy, when we were, helping to lead the that Pickett's Charge walk on July the 3rd, just a throng of tourists behind us and stuff, everybody screaming Virginia and all that kind of stuff, and of course the small group of Civil War reenactors who decided that they needed to go in front, and they would yell at anybody who tried to get in front of them or get their picture or anything. And then about halfway across the field, everybody just gave up being nice, and they just stormed ahead of them because they were going, they were just marching in proper formation, right? And all the tourists were just running. There were like kids everywhere, like woo, taking pictures. And I got some video because I had a GoPro to my head, strapped to my head. I was like, I'm not gonna, bother with my kepi. I'm just gonna like film this for posterity. And in that video that I captured this beautiful moment where just this smirking tourist, goes up to one of the hardcore reenactors, and he's just going, he practically has tears in his eyes, right? And basically, he just goes up to him and has his cell phone, just goes and takes this big selfie with this goofy smile on his face. I'm getting questions. Hey, Equals Gamer. Have I ever been to Franklin, Tennessee? No, I have not, actually. I've been to Franklin, North Carolina. I think, I made a video about that this summer, about my travels in Franklin, North Carolina. Well, what happened in Franklin, Tennessee? Well, there was some battle there, wasn't there? And some like horrible Klan activity or something terrible. I mean, you probably know since you bring it up. But yeah, I mean, what happened there, man? Do you know? Oh, fine. The Equals Gamer giving me the silent treatment, are you? That's okay. I'm sure you're just typing or something. But what else? What other stories do I have about my time here? Man, so many. It's just kind of hard to even remember them. Oh, one of my buddies, actually the inventor of the damn fine, a great dude. He thought of something really smart during that Pickett's Charge walk on July the 3rd, 2013. What he realized is that because of daylight savings time being introduced in World War I, I think it was, that the moment 3 p.m. where all of the all of us Confederates and all the reenactors and all the tourists came across the field here to the Union lines, that was actually an hour before it would have actually happened. So it was not 150 years to the minute. It was 150 years an hour too early. So basically, he just sat here that extra hour, and everybody had cleared out by that point, and he just kind of had this little secret, which he knew, which was that this was actually the moment 150 years to the second at the Confederate charge. And he just sort of had this little kind of spiritual moment, you know, kind of communing with the deceased and everything. Oh, we got more things. What's your favorite battle? I'm sorry. There we go. What's your favorite Civil War battle? I'm not sure if you've covered it or is it Gettysburg? If you haven't, if you don't mind giving us a brief rundown. James Green, I would be happy to. So I think it would be Gettysburg just because I have such a personal connection with that place. Sorry, there's like glare and I can't really see, but hopefully you can actually see my face here. I have a real personal connection with Gettysburg. So probably would be that, but also, let me think here. Yeah, it would just have to be Gettysburg. I'm sorry, that's a lame answer, but it's just such a personal spot for me. I have like, you know, favorite sort of characters from the Civil War who you know have next to nothing to do with Gettysburg. Let's see what other battles do I mean, Antietam was just such a, pardon my French, fucking tragedy, you know. And that's probably, I think, the most fascinating battle to me, just in terms of the horrible, senseless violence and just the brutality of that day. Like, bloodiest single day in American history. It's just like staggeringly large amounts of people just dead. You know what I mean? I mean, I've sort of, I have this buddy who I was telling about my YouTube channel, and he was saying, how many subscribers do you have? And I was like, oh, I got like 1,600. It's like not too many. And he was like, oh, dude, that's a lot. If 1,600 people died, that'd be news. And I was like, wow, that's actually, yeah, it would be news. That's a good way to think about it. And yeah, that'd be like a horrible tragedy, right? If 1,600 people died, you know, today in 2019, that would be like a nation-shaking tragedy. But how many died at Antietam? What was it? Like something like 20,000? Oh my God. And these were just kids. You know what I mean? God. Sorry, it's taking a turn for the depressing. Let's see what other people have to say here. Lord Zoidberg, good name. You think that a job as a museum curator / director would be similar to what you did? No, that would be much more involved than what I did. I think what I did at Gettysburg was basically like an acting gig, I would say, because I mean the reason that my particular buddy and I were hired because we knew each other, you know, before, and we went to school together, and we got hired basically because we both had experience acting, and we were like young and like hairy and, you know, just sort of looked the part, right? But so I think of it as sort of like a performance. So much more like, you know, working on like acting on a TV show or something like that. We just like play a certain character, and you learn everything you need to know about that character, or everything you can know about that character. And then you just sort of like take it from there, try to like embody it as much as possible. What we would try to do, I mean, we got really into it, man. We were like in character, you know what, like 70% of the time, you know, we had like different walks for our character, you know, we had different sort of vocal intonations for our characters. You know, we sort of like held ourselves a certain way. After, you know, maybe a month, I would get sick of playing one character, and I'd just like change my facial hair into something crazy, like shave this part and just some weird, you know, Civil War do. And then just play another character, you know, whether Yankee or Confederate or whatnot. Yeah, so that's sort of how I think, as far as like a museum curator or whatnot, I think that's much more, I think that's just kind of much more legit, honestly. It's the only way to put it. I mean, I love that job, but you know, and obviously I love history. I wouldn't have this YouTube channel, but I'm not a historian. You know, I don't have that sort of training. And honestly, I don't think I have the temperament for like academic life in general. You know, I'm a filmmaker, right? I like making sort of movies and like historical documentaries, and I'm a self-taught historian. I follow my sources. I make sure that everything is as correct as I can possibly make it. And I've read so many history books that it's kind of hard not to like absorb some of that knowledge. But I'm not a trained historian. I think you'd have to be a museum curator. Anyway, Ward Francis, what's up, dude? Hey, you appear much more authentic than the typical reenactors. Thank you. That means so much. I'm just tickled pink that you think so. Regular frontiersman says young and hairy. Yes, young and hairy, which is what you need to be, man. That's, you know, now I do. I mean, I made that video about Civil War reenactors, what was it, like 6 months ago? And honestly, I kind of regret it. I mean, at the time I had like 300 subscribers, and just people took it really personally. And, I was perhaps like a little more harsh than I should have been. Which, by the way, I'm aware and was aware when I made the video that the guns are real. I am very aware of that. I've met Civil War reenactors. I'm friends with Civil War reenactors. And also, the simple fact of the matter is, most are really cool. And it's just like with any group or just like with any hobby, like most people you meet are going to be awesome and really cool, but some are just going to be assholes. And that's just the fact of the matter is. And that video was referring, just to the small minority that are assholes. Yeah, it just sort of, I just think there's history buffs, generally, they can just be really pretentious. I don't know. I think when you, and some of you might sort of experience this as well, I mean, if you are into history and, let's say like when you're at trivia, with your friends at the bar, and so like a history question is asked and like, you're the one that they look to, right? That's like the true history buff. It's like, well, what do you think, Andy? Whatever. Who was the commanding officer, commander of the Army of the Potomac at this particular battle or whatever. But I feel like a lot of history buffs, they can base too much of their self-esteem on just knowing trivia. And there's a difference between knowing trivia and knowing things just about the world and about life. That might sound kind of rich coming from me, it's sort of like as harsh as I am on neo-Confederates, for not knowing their history. But that is, I would argue, sort of a, just something that should be changed in our national consciousness, but which really isn't. You're very welcome for the answer, James Green. Lord Zoidberg. So you're thinking about Zoid, you're thinking about going into the historical field. Yeah, I mean, I think you absolutely should. I'm not really the person to ask, again, because I don't have any training as a professional historian at all, or even as an academic. I hated school and I was bad at it. If I could direct you to any sort of online resource that just, in my opinion, pretty well encapsulates what modern academia is like, I would recommend Dr. Jackson Crawford's video about that subject. In fact, he's made a couple, I think. But there was one in particular, I don't remember the name of it, but he basically was talking about his sort of expectations versus his reality as far as the academic lifestyle was concerned. Like, he thought he'd get tenure and stuff, and then, it was like, whoops, they're in the 21st century, Jackson. Not going to happen for you, man. And even though he is, just like one of the most knowledgeable and one of the most respected people in his particular field, Norse language and myth, he's just like, an adjunct professor, and that's just kind of how the state of academia now. Anyway, just, I am talking out of my ass, just like, so I am just sort of repeating what I have heard. So I don't sort of necessarily base any life decisions off of what I have to say about that. Okay. Okay. So James said something else about. Okay. So I can't believe Nathan Bedford Forrest, I assume, still has statues. Not Forrest Gump, I hope. Put as many statues of Forrest Gump up as you want. That really confuses me that I'm British. Oh, hello. So I suppose it is a cultural thing. Yes. It surprises me too, honestly. It surprises me too, and it's unfortunate. So Nathan Bedford Forrest, I mean, he was just a murderous, psychotic slave trader. Like, that's just what that's just who he was, and there's really no getting around that. So yeah, I mean, I don't see why anyone would want to celebrate him. There are other Confederate generals with less sordid histories who you could celebrate their generalship if you really had to, I'm not, I mean, I know a lot of folks who criticize the Lost Cause like I do. They sort of think no Confederate generals should ever be celebrated, and I'm not really that absolute. But yeah, he is definitely one who there's just no reason, you know. And you know, you could go on and on about political correctness or whatever, but frankly, it's not even a political issue for me. It's just an issue of basic respect. You know, yeah, I mean, you know, if you're African American, you shouldn't have to look up at that guy's face. Guy who famously massacred African American soldiers after they had surrendered. My God. Okay, what else we got? Yes, Forrest, if you were a whole man, I'd beat you within an inch of your life. John Bell Hood. Yes, yes. John Bell Hood. He was a good soldier, that one. Okay, so what do we got here? Our gamer friend says, I was linked to your channel from the Gods in General video from Neo-Confederate, and I laugh, and then I sub. Thank you, my friend, for joining us. And yes, thank you, Ward, for your kind words about my Gods in General's video. Yeah, it definitely is pretty controversial. I was looking at it last week, a couple days ago or something like that, just like the likes and dislikes, and it's pretty, just a lot of dislikes on that video, man. But you know, most of the comments are actually really nice. So, except for the, you know, couple psychos. So, Bill Gates didn't like school. Well, you know, yeah, he didn't, but I'm not as smart as him, nor will I ever be as rich, I don't think. But that's good to know. Yeah, yeah, he dropped out of college, didn't he? I think. Atod says, "How do you feel about the Gettysburg 2020 reenactment being canceled?" This is the first time hearing about it. That kind of sucks. I wonder why. Do you know why? Yeah, this is the first time hearing about it. Tennessee has the biggest hard-on for Forrest. Yes, they do. Yes, they absolutely do. I don't really understand why, apart from the fact that he was from Tennessee. I don't know, man. Like, there were other Confederate generals from Tennessee who were not quite so murderous and horrible. It's like, you know, and you know, I mean, shit, Davy Crockett was from Tennessee, right? Or was he from Kentucky? I don't really remember. But Tennessee has plenty of heroes, and Tennessee is a great state. At least East Tennessee. West Tennessee is, you know, not as pretty as East Tennessee, that's for sure. Very shameful we have 4 statues. Yeah, man, it is. Oh, cool. Yeah, you were at the 155th reenactment. My friend with a Cyrillic username that I cannot pronounce. Yeah, man. I mean, you know, I was at the 150th, like I've been saying, and you know, it's like, yeah, it's cool, man. It's really cool. They do a great job, and everybody turns out. You know, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of reenactors. It's really awesome. But yeah, I mean, yeah, you know, they probably, though, knowing reenactors, I mean, I'm sure they'll like figure it out somehow. I don't know if it probably won't be an officially condoned reenactment, but they'll still come here. You know what I mean? They'll still come here. They'll still walk around in their gear and whatnot, and get treated like rock stars, which we were treated like rock stars when we would walk around Gettysburg and all of our get up and stuff. People asking pictures with us and stuff like that, which actually I've got a great story about, but I'll ask a couple questions first. God, sons of mine, I can't really see my screen here. Sorry, I'll ask a fun question next. A fun question next. Yes. No, that's what I've heard, is that he said that the American Civil War is not really taught in Britain. That's what I've heard. Yeah, I mean, don't you guys do like sort of like the Neolithic times, you know, like the Stonehenge and all that, and then you kind of move on to you know, Romans, and then the Saxons and Vikings, and then Norman conquest, and then doesn't it kind of like pretty much skip right ahead to colonialism and all that? But I mean, I will say British education, I mean, you guys have much better education, like as a whole, than we do. So, so that is good. I was kind of atypical because, you know, I grew up in a small Massachusetts town that was kind of renowned for its schools. Like, my parents moved there for the public school. So I actually got like a really good education. But that's definitely the exception rather than the norm in America. But I still hated it. I've always hated school. All right, well, what we got here? I'm sort of running out of. But should we keep on acquiring more Civil War properties, or should we just spend more time and money on those we already have? What do you mean properties? Oh, you mean like a historical sites and stuff like that? Like as yeah, just like the government. You mean is sort of like acquiring historical sites? Yes, I think so. I mean, I think they should be preserved as long as possible, and as much as they possibly can. I don't think it's likely, just because of the Park Service and just kind of Park Service. They just don't get the funding that like other federal agencies get. But yeah, no, I think they should. I mean, a lot of the Civil War battlefields, like the big ones, like Gettysburg, of course, and Antietam, Fredericksburg. They look great. I mean, Manassas, it's got like roads cutting through it. It's not like the prettiest, and it's in Northern Virginia, which is obviously a hellhole. But it's not like the prettiest battlefield, but it's well preserved. The statue of Stonewall doesn't have poop on it, bird poop on it, or anything like that. It's well preserved. So I wouldn't necessarily say sort of sink more money into sort of unnecessary restorations. But yeah, I mean, that's just my opinion, though. Yeah, I think they should acquire more historic things, historic properties, and restore them and everything. It got bright all of a sudden. Yeah, no, it's very partly cloudy here, regular frontiersman. It's just and like I'm moving around and I tend to gesticulate and all that. So I don't know what I'm shooting on my webcam right now. Just like right off of my computer. So it's gonna do whatever it wants to do, I think. But I apologize for that. If you have any free time, you should check out War of Rights. Yeah, YouTube keeps recommending War of Rights Let's Play videos to me, and I kind of want to check it out. I don't know, what is it on? Is it a PC game? Because I'm not a PC guy. I suppose I could be. Okay, what else we got? This is on the recommended. I'm very happy. Haha, I'm enjoying the stream. Thank you, Moggy, and thank you for your lovely comments on my Beowulf and Grendel video. I don't really know much. I heard the committee just can't do it this year. My regiment was pretty bummed. Yeah, man, it is a bummer. It's a huge bummer. Yeah, I'm really sorry you can't do it. But I mean, you should, like I said, you should still come out. Go to O'Rourke's, get a couple beers. Go to the Lincoln Diner. all the Gettysburg hotspots. We go like every 5 years. We were bummed as well. Yeah, man, it is a huge bummer. We often start basic history with 1066, then we'll cover Tudors and the World Wars of the Standard. This is James Green, my British friend. We do a classic class in some schools for Romans, and archaeology often covers the Saxons, etc. Yeah, that's about what I've heard. And that stuff is really cool. I mean, that's amazing history, for sure. I'm not surprised that you guys. I mean, honestly, I'm sure that a lot of the educators in Britain just don't really have the time for American history, because it's just so much British history that you got to get through. Oh man, they're really coming in now. Coverage of the empire has become less common, still taught, but in a more nuanced way. That makes sense. That makes total sense. I mean, as sort of the academic thinking about the empire changes and about colonialism changes. And yeah, it is. I mean, that whole thing. I mean, especially when it comes to the history of British colonialism and the British Empire. I mean, it is just such a complicated issue. As is the case with a lot of historiography, which is kind of the way historians think about the past and how that changes over time. Pretty much since the late '60s and the Cultural Revolution or whatever, the general trend in academia has been like, well, colonialism is just bad. It's bad. And I mean, actually, Lindy Bay, she talks about that sometimes. Colonialism is bad, and because colonialism is bad, he's like kind of prissy about it. But and yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, and at the end of the day, it is bad. But also, people are people. It's a complicated subject, and Britain had no legal or moral right to just storm into India or any of these places and take them over. But I think in the case of the British Empire as well, there were like there were some good things that they did and a lot of bad things. And yeah, you kind of have to take, you sort of have to like examine them both. But it's not like something like, I don't know, like Cortez or the conquistadors where they just came to plunder and murder and it was just horrible. It was, I think it was a lot more nuanced than that. And yeah, I mean, the education should reflect that, or like the Romans as well, I mean, there are a lot of historians who say, that the Roman occupation of a lot of the countries around the Mediterranean were just horrible and it was destructive and but the thing is especially about the Roman world, I mean, and even, sort of the British Empire in the early days before everyone was like, Britain, you can't be ruling half of the world anymore. It's just not morally right. It's against international law. We've got these things called laws now, you can't do this anymore, man. But I mean, it's important to understand that like throughout most of history, the way that the world worked was that if you weren't aggressively expanding as like as a state or as a military power, then you would be aggressively expanded upon. That was just, it was very much a dog eat dog world. It was entirely, it was seen as just completely normal. There wasn't anything sort of strange about it. And if you look at, I won't sort of talk too much my ass more about the British Empire, because honestly, I don't know that much about it. I'm not an expert about it at all. But I do know quite a bit of Roman history, and just, I think it's pretty telling that when you look at a lot of the revolts against Rome that happened, a lot of them happened just within a generation. I think actually most, if not all of them, happened within a generation of the Roman conquest, right? So it's like when they sort of remembered what it was like to be an independent nation, and then they revolted, because of Roman injustices and whatnot, which no doubt occurred. But it is interesting, especially in terms of Roman colonialism, how they, how especially the aristocracy of places like Gaul and, Britain a little later as well, they just kind of really sort of took to the Roman way of life and benefited from it. Yeah, it's just interesting. I'm probably putting my, I don't want to put my foot in my mouth here, talking about a controversial subject like colonialism, which is honestly not my area of expertise, but that's just kind of that's what I sort of think about it, what I understand it to be. Okay. Yes, land, because with the question, would the money be better spent on preserving the major ones we already have? I don't, yeah, like I said, I don't really think so. I think all the major ones, at least that I've visited recently, are in pretty good shape. But they should definitely be maintained for sure. Should we turn the Spangler site where you worked into a bed and breakfast? No, I don't think so. I think I love the Spangler Farm. That's great. It's yeah, I mean, they did such a beautiful job restoring it. I don't think it should be a bed and breakfast at all. LOL, does that say LOL, or I'd go to Pickett's Buffet? LOL, go to Pickett's Buffet. I'm not going to go to Pickett's Buffet. The food is terrible at Pickett's Buffet. Steam, but at a great community. I'm in Regiment 6 Louisiana. Is that 6 Louisiana? We drill, have events of 200. We don't even have a company. We even have a company just for Frenchmen. Oh, that's awesome, dude. Oh, that's great. That's Equals Gamer. He's telling me about his regiment. That's fantastic, man. That's awesome. Are you in the like New Orleans area by any chance? I mean, if you guys are doing events in there, I'd love to come check you out. Lord Zoidberg says, I'm from California. I was taught about the English Civil War. Is this common anywhere else? I was not taught about the English Civil War. The only thing I was taught about the English Civil War on the East Coast was basically how the Puritans then came to New England, where I grew up, and basically said, and it's like, it was like the context for the Puritan migration to New England. And then sort of also, I think I wrote a paper about this actually, is how like the Cavaliers then kind of went to Virginia, right? And the two sides then, would face off again in the sequel, the American Civil War. And yeah, I think that's a very broad way to look at the history, but I mean, it is technically accurate. I mean, even to this day, not all of the North, but certainly New England and the Northeast have that very Puritan mindset. And, granted, the sort of the Cavalier aristocratic foofy sort of thing that the South had going on pretty much died with the plantation class after abolition. But yeah, I mean, they still have that swagger to them. That's for sure. I actually love that about Southerners. It's their swagger. It's great. Sick used to be a lieutenant in the 11th Indiana. Nice. It's awesome. I do wonder whether the romanticism related to the Old South comes from. I wonder where it comes from. Is it all due to the lost cause idea? That's a great question. I think that's a big part of it. So, I mean, I think a lot of it is kind of inextricably tied into the lost cause, is the short answer. But I think the long answer is that there's a certain like think about it like this, man. Try to remember something that happened to you 20 years ago. Something important that happened to you 20 years ago. In particular, maybe something that you're proud of. Are you going to remember everything like really accurately? Probably not. The more you think about it, the more you remember it. And actually think, I think studies have been done about this, that sort of when you remember an event, every time you remember an event, you're not really remembering the event. You're remembering your last memory of the event. So things, tend to distort over time. Memory is unreliable. And so let's say, that you're, somebody like Sam Watkins, who wrote the great memoir, Company H. So Sam Watkins was a Confederate private, and he wrote this great memoir. It's a fantastic read. I recommend it to everybody. He's got a great sense of humor. This guy is so funny, and he does a great. And I love reading, just the memoirs of the grunts in wars, especially wars that are typically sort of remembered as these kind of, noble struggles, with, Ron Maxwell music swelling in the background, General, we must advance, my brave Virginians who have died, all that bullshit, all that romanticism. It's really refreshing to read the memoirs of the private soldiers, because they're just like, it sucked. It sucked so hard. We couldn't sleep. We were always hungry. We were always filthy. And Sam Watkins, he talks about it, it's like he was in the army for like a month, and he was like, fuck the Confederacy, fuck secession, I'm done. He just like gave up completely on the cause. He just didn't care. He wanted to go home. But anyway, as a long digression. But anyway, Sam Watkins, he didn't write a diary during the war. His memoirs were written 20 years after the fact, and he says multiple times, he admits it himself, that he's drawing it entirely from memory. Now, Sam Watkins also happens to have a very romantic view of the Old South, and he asserts time and time again, we're fighting for states' rights, whatever, we're fighting for states' rights. He echoes a lot of the lost cause talking points. And yeah, just think about it. You're writing something that happened 20 years ago. You might romanticize it. You might frame it in the best light possible. And so I think a lot of the feeling among Southerners during kind of the dark, economically depressed days that followed the Civil War was like, man, it was so much better before. And that is, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, that's when the lost cause myth formed. And so, yeah, it's kind of, I feel like it was almost kind of parallel to that in many ways. All right, what else we got? Good trucker hats available at the Pickus Buffet. Ooh, good to know. Maybe I will stop in. But I actually got this hat just earlier because I've been in the market for a Union Kepi, and I don't want to get two hats in one place. No, it's the War of Rights. In real life. Oh, it's in. Oh, I see. In War of Rights. Oh, okay. Okay. And in real life, I'm in Porter's Battery in Clarksville, Tennessee, Fort Donelson. Okay, cool. Nice. All right. Yeah, my mistake. Do you think Lindy Beige is too broad on the subjects he talks about and the content he makes, says a regular frontiersman? No, not necessarily. I love Lindy Beige. I think he's great. I think a lot of it is you need to take it with a grain of salt. A lot of it is just kind of him spitballing and him theorizing. When he makes videos about like why, like how many men shoot to kill, or like, what, like why people do things in battle. I think it's pretty clear looking at him and me. I mean, I'm not, but pretty clear looking at him that he has not been to battle, that he has no military experience. I mean, he has no sort of personal way of knowing. He's just a very knowledgeable guy who's just theorizing about possibilities. But I will say that I do, and as far as like a lot of his like weapons and armor stuff, especially his older videos, yeah, sometimes like a little too broad, or like he makes certain assumptions, but that I don't necessarily agree with as far as like how a weapon was used or whatever. And and also a lot of his older videos, some of his like he did a whole series, maybe like 8 years ago, where he was saying that like global warming wasn't like a big deal or whatever. I mean, yeah, clearly he has some sort of like kind of dodgy personal opinions, but yeah, I love the dude. I love him. He's a source of endless entertainment. I love putting him on when I'm like putting together a shelf or something like that. You know what I mean? He's just a very comforting British voice while I'm screwing together a shelf, or just doing some like working on a little project by hand. He's great for that. And James Green says, yeah, we did a ton, spelled in the British way, about the English Civil War. I did notice a lot of similarity between Planterglass and our own aristocracy. Yes, yeah, there are a lot of similarities for sure. And a lot of the Confederates in their memoirs even say, the blood of the old Cavaliers was in us. You know what I mean? They like make a very direct comparison between them and the Cavaliers. I think a somewhat flattering comparison. Because I think that in sort of retrospect, because the Puritans were just so dour and they were just so anti-fun that it's very hard to kind of like connect with them or see them as the good guys. So I think by default, when people are thinking about the English Civil War, they often see the Cavaliers as the good guys. And there's almost that sort of tragic aspect, right, of Charles I's execution. That it's sort of like the fallen king, whatever it's almost this kind of tragic, sort of almost Shakespearean character, and I think it's very dramatic. And sort of when you're reading about the history, you can get a lot of like sympathy for him and whatnot. Though honestly, I really, I don't know enough about the English Civil War to tell you, specifically, oh no, these were the good guys, and these were the bad guys, even if there were such a thing in real life, which, as we all know, there isn't. Charlie. Hey, Charlie. I've always wanted to go here in Gettysburg, I assume. Live in Illinois. None of my family is into history like I am. Should still go, man. Still go. Get a bus ticket. Carausios Kaiser says, I would have fought for the South. I even wear a gray kepi. Gets lots of compliments. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on where you live. I mean, it entirely depends on where you live, right? Although even that, not really. Because, obviously there were a lot of Northerners, Copperheads, who were against the war. There were a lot of Southerners who were pro-Union. Like I said in that video about Colonel Witcher, who, Witcher and his boys just round up and brutally murdered because they just happen to have different political views. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the way I sort of think about it is I would not have fought for anybody because, I mean, no, I would have fought for the North. I mean, I just, because they would conscript me. But I wouldn't want to go because war sucks, man. Especially for a private soldier. It sucks. It's awful. It's just terrible, Just doesn't sound like fun at all. God. Lindy Beige is basically the kind of tipsy, posh Tory type. Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Saying, I like Boris Johnson. I think he's great, Yeah. Yeah, he is. He is very eccentric and sounds quite posh. I don't know, though, how much of that is his upbringing or whatnot. He's also an older gent, so, he does kind of have sort of an antiquated accent, but not, obviously, I don't know when he was born, like 1970, like even most people born in 1970 in Britain don't have that accent. I think he just watched a lot of Monty Python when he was a kid, as did I. So I can't blame him for that. Do they have reenactments at Gettysburg every year, says Charlie? My friend and I plan on going to one next year if there is one. Well, I mean, I thought they did, and yet I was hearing from some guys some people in the chat here that no, the 2020 was canceled. So I don't really know. And then Charlie also says, thoughts on The Patriot. I know it's incredibly inaccurate, but I view it as more historical fiction. I think it's a fantastic film. Yeah, I mean, as you guys probably figured out by now, inaccuracy, especially in movies, doesn't really bother me that much. Like, I can see past it if the movie is good, if the story is good, if the characters are good. Honestly, I don't think it's like the most important thing at all. And yeah, I find it like kind of smug when people like point out inaccuracies in movies. Yeah, it's just a little smug. Because ultimately, yeah, you like it's entertainment, right? I mean, and I do it too, but I try not to be like too terribly judgmental, I mean, like in that Beowulf and Grendel video from yesterday, reason I don't like Vikings, the TV show, isn't because it's inaccurate. It's because it's just not a very good show. You know what I mean? It's just like kind of soap opera-y and lame and like sappy. But yeah, and also like I said, even though it's very inaccurate as far as like the look of the Vikings and everything, I think The Last Kingdom is a great show. I love the book series by Bernard Cornwell, and yeah, I mean the acting's great, the characters are cool, like the stories, it's very bingeable. Yeah, I can sort of see through it. But anyway, I'm going on a tangent here. The Patriot. I sort of have a love-hate relationship with The Patriot. I don't think it's a very good movie, but I think it has like some really fantastic moments. And I am, it's kind of a shameful thing to admit, but I am a huge Mel Gibson fan. It's just that he's a great director. He's like always kills it when he's acting. They say never meet your heroes, and probably in Mel Gibson's case, that's absolutely true. I'm not sure I would get along with him personally, but I can't help but admire his work. I mean, he's great, and he's good in that movie. It's not his best role, but he's good in it. The best scene in The Patriot, though, like by fucking far, is Mel Gibson destroying all the British soldiers in the woods with the tomahawk. That is a classic scene. It is so awesome. Yeah, I think that scene alone is worth the price of admission for that movie. Oh, interesting. So James says the King, Charles I, talking about the English Civil War, is now viewed as the good guy. I think due to the fact Cromwell was just a trash human. Yes, he was. Plus having a queen who was a descendant of Charles, which, yeah, she is, helps. Yeah, that makes sense. Granted, we then invited a Dutchman to remove the Stuarts as they were Catholic. Oh, and no, if you go to Kent or that sort of area, that's how they sound. It's like Lindy Beige. Not so much up north, though. Not in the north, you're a bastard. Who was the best cavalry general of the American Civil War? Says Carausius Caesar. Forrest? No. He was a fine general. I just hate him. So Mosby. I like Mosby. Morgan, Stuart, Sheridan. That is a really good question. I would lean toward Mosby. I think he was incredibly competent, really intelligent, and just a badass. I mean, it was just like such a huge badass. Stuart was a good general. I mean, I think that he gets often a bad rap for what he did here. Well, not here, like 5 miles that way. When he did his ride around Hooker back before Meade got control of the Army of the Potomac, and fighting Joe Hooker was in control. Stuart had this big plan. He was going to ride a ring around Hooker and basically like harass the Union supply lines or whatever, and just kind of cause general mayhem up here in the federal heartland. And that this is often seen as a huge mistake because Lee's army was essentially blind because Stuart just wasn't in communication with him, right? He was off doing his thing, and Lee had no idea that the Army of the Potomac had actually crossed the Potomac until like 3 days later. When that spy Harrison demanded to see him. Made famous by the film Gettysburg, where he shows up at the beginning at the picket line. Directed by Ron Maxwell, who of course also directed The Parent Trap 2. Look it up. What else? Who's my favorite? I mean, Mosby's my favorite. I don't know if he's objectively the best, but he's my favorite. What's my opinion? Oh, Forrest, even with Ford. Oh, okay, so Ward Francis is doing a rant on on General Forrest. Oh, you're saying Forrest, even with the 4 pillar point. Oh, so you think Forrest was the best cavalry general? I mean, you could make that argument. Frontiersman says, "What's your opinion on Custer?" I mean, yeah, he was a total asshole. Yeah, very effective commander. I mean, you kind of have to be, or at least be sort of very good at politicking to be promoted as highly as he was, as young as he was. I mean, he was like younger than me when he was a brigadier general fighting in East Cavalry Field over there. Yeah, I mean, my opinion of Custer is not terribly high. I can appreciate his military sort of aplomb, but not his Native American murdering. Not really at all. But he is my favorite character in the movie Little Big Man. So there's that. Yeah, Hill did not admire Stewart, viewed him as cavalier. Yeah, a lot of people didn't like Stewart, and unsurprisingly. Richard Harris rocked as Cromwell in the movie. Oh, what? Richard Harris played Cromwell? That's awesome. James says, a very British fact about me. My father served as the Batman, pronounced Batman? Your father was Batman? No, it's Lord Howard, the Duke of Norfolk. Cool. Wow. That's awesome. What is a Batman? Other than a Dark Knight, a lone guardian. Oh, Jesus Christ. I've been talking for 50 minutes. Listen, guys, I think I got to go because it is, yeah, I think we're reaching the end of our time together. But, oh, it's a personal military assistant. Okay, that's awesome. That's cool. Yeah. But yeah, I think we're reaching the end of our time together. I'm very pleasantly surprised that so many of you commented and gave me good advice. I do want to tell you one story about my time in Gettysburg before I leave you, though. So this was on, this was the night before July the 1st. So the night before the first day of the anniversary of the battle. And my buddy and I, we were not working that day. We were just on our own time, sort of having, going to some of the ceremonies and the festivities around here. And of course, we dressed up because we always dressed up when we went out in our garb. I was dressed as a Confederate captain. He was dressed as a Union admiral, somewhat randomly, but. And we were part of this big candlelit procession that was going from Meade's headquarters, which is that away, to the cemetery, to the National Soldier Cemetery, which is that away. And we walked down, I think it was the Taneytown Road, you know, it's a very solemn occasion, you know, really quite beautiful. People laid candles on the tombs of the Federal soldiers there. It was really quite touching. And this big group of Boy Scouts asked for our pictures in the cemetery. And this wasn't unusual. I mean, people asked us for pictures all the time, you know, because we were dressed up and we had big beards and, you know, some of us still have big beards. And we just, you know, we looked the part, you know, we looked pretty good. So, yeah, they asked us for pictures, big Boy Scout troop, with this lady with them, I guess as a chaperone. I don't know. I've never been a Boy Scout, and I wouldn't know. But yeah, she was sort of this adult lady with them, was like, oh man, could you like get a picture with like all the boys, you know? They're like, yeah, of course. And so, you know, we all get together and do this, and they take a couple, you know, garish flash photographs, you know, in this dark cemetery of us. And they're like, oh, great, thank you. And a bunch of the kids disperse. And my buddy goes off to talk to a woman. And I'm just kind of standing alone, you know, twiddling my thumbs. And and the lady comes up to me and she's like, oh, you know, listen, Derek didn't get to take a picture with you. He cut himself. Look, and the kid's going, yeah, he's got like this, you know, cut on his thumb. It's like he cut himself. There was this whole thing, you know, he wasn't able to get in the picture. Mind if he just gets a picture with you? It's like, yeah, of course, you know, come in, man. You know, got the kid and, you know, smiling at the camera and everything. The kid's just going, and, you know, I've got a big smile on my face. And she takes this really garish flash photograph, like, oh my God, thank you so much. You know, she says, just like, this is great, you know, really appreciate it. Thank you. I'm like, yeah, no problem. She walks away. And I get this horrible sinking feeling deep in my gut. And I think, oh no, I'm fucked. I really hope she destroys that photograph or just deletes it off of her camera or whatever. Because if she doesn't, and if she didn't, then there is a picture in existence of me, dressed as a Confederate officer with a big smile on my face next to a crying black child. Hopefully that will never see the light of day. Anyway, guys, this has been great. Thank you so much. Poop to you back, Eduardo. Yeah, I gotta go. But yeah, that was awesome. Maybe we'll do another one of these. Adios.